Well, welcome to another episode of Stockport Grammar School Talks Sport. Today we've got an exciting guest. We've got Robert Elstone, who's been an accountant to sports CEO in a number of organisations, and also in his sporting world from shot putter to Team GB age group dual athlete.
That's a good introduction. I've not had that one before, but yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Before we get cracking with the juicy questions, talk me through your wall of fame.
Yeah, well, I know you wanted to chat about heroes and outlooks on life, and sports people have played a part in that. So when I was at Everton, I got a number of photos of sporting heroes to stick on my wall. So I brought them home with me when I left Everton, and they're on my wall. So I'm going to start top my right. Can you see Daley Thompson? So yeah. Daley Thompson, ultra competitor, 2 successive Olympic golds in decathlon, arguably the toughest sport in the world, and the ultimate supreme competitor, mentally and physically and technically, just had the jinx on all his rivals. So full of admiration for Daley. Wally Lewis, next one. I'm not sure everybody will recognise Wally, but I'm a fanatical rugby league fan. Wally was an iconic player who, probably from 30 years ago now, but if you ask any Aussie and any rugby league fan to name their best ever players, Wally will be in the top 3. So he was an amazing player ahead of his time, a real all-round superstar rugby league player, but also probably demonstrates my love of all things Australian. I describe myself as an Australian in an Englishman's body, so I've got a lot of time for Australians. Bjorn Borg, who was winning Wimbledon 5 times in a row, an amazing 5th final win against John McEnroe. I was probably 12, 13, 14 years of age, wishing I was Bjorn Borg, go down the park and practice topspin forehand. Could never really master topspin backhand, but absolutely love Bjorn Borg. Bit lower down, don't know if you can see him, Eddie Merckx, who arguably the greatest ever road cyclist. Eddie Merckx was virtually invincible and nicknamed the Cannibal, and just rode a bike like nobody else, I guess. Then Seb Coe. So I was a very impressionable young man in the late 70s. As you said, I wasn't really a shot putter, but I certainly wasn't built like an 800-meter runner. So Seb came on the scene and made running 800 meters and miles look so easy. And in 81, he broke a world record, 141 for 800 meters, which is 12.5 seconds for every 100 meters, 8 times in a row. It's just phenomenal. I think 40 years on, only 2 athletes have beaten it. So phenomenal athlete who, as I said, made it look so easy. Bob Beamon did a jump that just redefined the sport. If anybody hasn't seen it, watch the clip of it. He literally jumps out of his skin and jumped 8 meters 90 in 1968, and I think there's only one person jumped longer in 1991. I think Mike Powell, 95. Just an amazing athletic experience. Viv Richards came about at the same time as Bjorn Borg, 76 West Indies tour. I love my cricket. I was a batsman. I'd kind of modelled myself on Jeff Boycott, and then Viv came along, and I realised there's more to cricket than Jeff, and Viv was amazing. And then Emil Zatopek. I got into long distance running, became obsessed by it. And Zatopek was just a pretty unique character. Won 3 gold medals in the, I think, 52 Olympics. The first guy to win 5, 10 and marathon. And famously, I think in the marathon, ran alongside Jim Peters, who was the British superstar, and just asked him whether we were going fast enough. And at that point, he just zoomed off into the distance. He had the revolutionized training. He did like 60 times 400 meter reps, which is just incredible. And then bizarrely, he used to wash his army uniform by putting it in a tin bath and running in it on the spot. So quirky character, but amazing character. So they're my wall of fame. As I said, probably Lance Armstrong missing for obvious reasons. The other one who should be up there is Paula Radcliffe. And you ask anybody, I'm a huge fan of Paula Radcliffe, who, again, just smashed a world record, put it out of sight. It lasted for years. And I think the thing with Radcliffe was I kind of could relate to what she had to go through and her mental toughness, her training regime. I just think to run 2 hours 15 I've got some sort of feel for what she put herself through physically and mentally. So I'm full of admiration and awe for all of that. So they're my sporting heroes. That's probably more than you bargained for, Danny. But it gives you a bit of a flavour of what motivates me and who excites me and who gives me inspiration.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. A lot of variety there as well, which is brilliant.
Yeah. No football.
Yeah,
footballers. No American sports people. I don't know if anybody's watched Last Dance. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan probably should go up there because when you watch that, there was something really unique and special about Jordan. Again, not just physically and technically, but also mentally. And when they were a point down with 1 second left on the clock, and they gave it to him, and every single time he nailed that on, there's something special about him, wasn't there, as well? So,
who would your footballer be? Other than Mick McCarthy, who would it be?
Oh, crikey. I'm going to give it away. Listen, I don't know whether people, as a kid, I grew up as a Liverpool fan. I worked for Everton and without any shadow of a doubt became an Everton fan. But as a kid, Dalglish. All
right, let's get cracking then. So if you, Robert, want to give us a bit of a background of you and your journey to where you are today as Super League CEO.
Yeah, I look back on it. Coming towards the end of my career, I've had a very privileged career, very fortunate, very enjoyable. I went to university, graduated, and the first job that got offered to me was training as a chartered accountant. And I'd done an economics degree, so there was some natural fit. My dad was whispering in my ear, A, it'd be good to get a job, and B, it'd be good to get a job as an accountant. And there I was. And so I dived headlong into that. I was a kind of sad individual. I enjoyed doing exams, and therefore the world of accountancy was just a never-ending stream of exams leading up to qualification. So that motivated me. I also, I think, worked in a very swanky office. Well, it was for a boy from Barnsley in the middle of Leeds, with a directory of offices around the world, one of which was in Sydney, and the motivation to get qualified and go out to Sydney was huge. So there was a big incentive to get my exams done on that basis. So I did that, really enjoyed it. I probably took for granted some of the things that it taught me, and not just the obvious sort of basic financial literacy, but also just work ethic, detail, professionalism, standards, all those sorts of things. You probably take those for granted, but I think they stood me in good stead. I managed to qualify first time, which got me out to Sydney, and which was a wonderful experience. It was very much motivated by a love of rugby league and a real desire to go and live in what turned out to be, and what I kind of knew to be, was one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I had a brilliant time, but I look back on that, and again, at the time, didn't really think it through, but really important, I think, for anybody to travel, to embrace new things, move to new locations, test yourself out, meet new people. And that gave me that experience. Came home, realised I didn't want to be an accountant, and it was the predictability of it and the repetitiveness of it, I guess. And listen, the world of accountancy is not like that at all as you move through. And, I absolutely wouldn't recommend that as a career for anybody, but it wasn't for me. And I wrote speculatively to the chief exec of the Rugby Football League, and my good fortune is he opened the letter. My good fortune is he read it. My good fortune, he invited me in for an interview, and then again at the end of all that, he offered me a job. And it was a bit of a leap of faith. It was telling my dad that I was going to turn my back on accountancy and go and work at the Rugby League. There was a slight quizzical look, as you might imagine, probably a bit more than that. But I plunged myself in at the deep end. I embraced all the opportunities. I put my hand up for every job that was going. I got sent out to Dublin to start with, to organise and promote a game of rugby league, and I had no real experience of that, just a commitment to hard work and getting it done. I got a pretty shoddy A-level, in French, and I put my hand up to go out to Paris with my wife and a very young family, to go and live in a hotel. And I always say my fairly scarce knowledge of French wasn't really an issue, as we had, I think, 22 Australians and 2 French guys living in a hotel on the outskirts of Paris. So, but it was a crazy experience, and then some amazing stories on the back of that. That came to an end, but I kept in touch with Deloitte, who were building a sports consulting practice, and they were doing that on the back of the emergence of football in particular as an industry, as a proper profession, as somewhere to work. And I think prior to this formation of Sky, the formation of the Premier League, the Taylor Report, and all those sorts of things in the early 1990s, sport as an industry and as a chance for young people to go on working didn't really exist. So it's a relatively new industry still. And one of the things about that is that structures and career progression and all those sorts of things are still quite difficult in sport. It's not like working in accountancy or law or retail or teaching, I guess, Danny, where, after certain periods of time, you naturally move to certain jobs, and it's quite well defined and well structured. Sport still isn't like that, even 34 years on from when it really first started. But I went to work at Deloitte. It was at the time, as I said, when the Premier League was starting to knock down doors, when Man United were all conquering on and off the field, and clubs from all over Europe used to ring us and say, make us like Man United, and leagues from all over Europe said, we'd like to be like the Premier League. So we would put our hands up and give advice and all of that. But I remember the first job I ever did, I'd come out of working at the Rugby Football League. I was still, an accountant with very limited experience. And we won a piece of work at Norwich City. Delia Smith had hired Deloitte to modernise and transform Norwich City. And I remember sitting in the car driving to Norwich thinking, what am I going to say? How am I going to do it? Can I really do this? And you just, again, it's kind of roll your sleeves up, get on with it. And we left a real lasting impression on Norwich, and still friends with Delia.
And Rob, what age were you at this stage?
I would have been, that was, let me get this right, that would have been my early 30s. So I'd gone up to mid-20s chartered accountancy, done some time at the governing body of the Rugby Football League, and then sort of late 20s, early 30s, gone into this sports consulting role. And it was interesting because throughout that, lots of exposure to really good issues. I've got a super guy leading it, a partner who was really challenging to work for, a real hard taskmaster, but learnt an awful lot from him on a number of things, really. That then came to an end when I was offered a job at Sky to go and work in sports marketing, essentially. Sky had got contracts with Man City, Chelsea, Sunderland and Leeds. They were nervous about losing out on media rights, and they also wanted to have a go at building their own sort of sports marketing agency. So I got hired to do that. That sort of got me experience of sports sponsorship, sports marketing, got me closer to how clubs behaved and operated. So again, this all kind of happened by accident, but I got core financial skills. I then went and did some sort of sharp end rugby league work, running games and trying to promote stuff. I did a bit of advisory work, and then I was sort of adding another piece in the jigsaw through sports marketing and commercial matters. So it was all building, and I guess the combination of all of that got me an opportunity at Everton. So 2005, I think. So I would have been just 40 years of age, chief operating officer, and then 4 or 5 years later, CEO. And, I did 13 years at Everton, and it was absolutely fantastic working with great people, getting close to players, getting so bought into the fortunes, leaping out of the chair when Lukaku scored and sinking into despair when whoever equalised or got the winner. And that emotional bond was brilliant. You were very connected to fans, which was a real roller coaster, steering well clear of any social media, and challenging times when we got no money, and it got really, really difficult. So very unpredictable, very volatile, but massively exciting. So hugely privileged to do that. And then sort of almost coming full circle back on my career was the chance to go on lead Super League. And it was a job I'd always really wanted. Wasn't ever sure it was going to come around. Very different to the job at Everton. Very different requirements, very different remuneration level. Speaking openly about it, but it was in my heart and in my gut that I really wanted to do it. So, and it was my first ever job in sport, and who knows, it'll be my last job in sport. But it's about modernising, marketing, selling Super League, which is a challenge. But I just believe so passionately in the product that that stands me in good stead. So that brings you around to where I am today from a career point of view, anyway, doesn't it?
I know, really, really exciting journey there. And I touched upon it in your introduction. You have got a little bit of a sporting career as well. So talk us through that for the listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like so many, kids, so many young boys, and you saw through some of my heroes, spent most of my teenage years playing sport, probably cricket, football with my mates. Dominated. I grew up in an area where everybody played football and nobody played rugby league. So my only opportunity to play rugby league came when I went to university. Because I'd watched so much, I kind of, I was decent at it and walked into a very good Hull University side that actually won the university's championship in my third year. So I was very lucky. That got me a Yorkshire cap in rugby league and an England cap, in rugby league. So I played international student rugby league. But at that point, I was sort of getting more and more into my running, and I always felt, again, what I really wanted to do. I'm talking about Seb Coe earlier, wanted to be like Seb. Well, that was a million miles off ever coming to fruition, but I really enjoyed running for lots of reasons. I think at that point, probably satisfying my competitive instinct, and it was about always trying to, catch that guy. There were either teammates in the club, or there were mates from school, or some of my wife's brothers. I had a spell where I was going neck and neck with him, and it was always about that sort of, I want to beat that next guy, I'll work a bit harder. And I look back on it, and I went from a first ever 10K in 48 minutes to one in just over 31 minutes. So that was pretty quick. And I kept a running diary and look back on all of that. And it's amazing to think, how quick I used to run, where I used to run, and what I used to do to train. And I think for about 12 years on a trot, I averaged 3,000 miles a year of running.
Wow.
60 miles a week, 9 miles a day for 12 years without missing. That's on average. And it was bonkers. But, it got me from 48 minutes to 31 minutes. So it kind of, that's why I did it. But it also got me to some amazing places. I made loads of great mates. I've got some brilliant memories. The best way to discover any new city, any new holiday resort is to go for a run. In Sydney, I joined a club that every Sunday morning at 6:30 would meet in a different part of the city and run for 30 kilometres. So you would run for 30 kilometres on the northern shores of Sydney, in the inner city, in the harbour, down in the south, in the national park. And over a period of time, you just got to know places. So I got so much into that. And I became interested in sports performance, and I read loads of books on all the great legends of running. And got to a decent standard. I ended up running for Yorkshire, which was something I'm really proud of. And then as I got older, I got into cycling as my body creaked a bit, and I did probably get a bit fed up with that 60 miles a week. And so I got into cycling, and then I discovered that actually merging cycling and running, there was a sport called duathlon. So in my age group, I got to compete for England by running pretty much a 40-minute 10K, an hour on the bike for 40 kilometres, and a 20-minute 5K got me into the Great Britain duathlon team. And that took me to Australia, to Spain, to Holland to compete for Britain. So, albeit at age group level, I managed to put on a not pretty sight, an England tri-suit. I really wish I could swim. I've had some really shocking attempts at swimming lessons. And I did one triathlon in Tatton Park where I dived in and attempted to do front crawl until I got to the point where I thought, nobody can see me anymore. I was breaststroking, and I was literally probably the last one out of the water, and then had a pretty chaotic bike ride as I plowed through the course. But so now, the sporting wise, pretty decent, but fundamentally just an obsession with training and a lot of hard work, really. There you go.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's more than decent to go and ever represent your country at whatever it is. That can be something you're proud of.
Yeah, no, I am.
And then, in terms of that, obviously, that for me is high performance, and you've worked in high performance in the business sense and in the elite environment of sport. What is high performance to you?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and and ultimately, performance is a measure of output, and output in a competitive world, whether it be in industry, in business, or in sport, is how it benchmarks to peers and rivals and objectives and standing up to scrutiny. So, high performance is going out there and beating a rival, beating a PB, delivering something to a great standard, outperforming the competition business-wise, or maybe even slightly softer, just standing up to scrutiny. So it's about delivering. It's about output, and I think within that it would be excellence, consistency, timing of it. For a lot of people, delivering on the right day at the right moment is a part of that. So I think, as I said, I think it's output that stands up to scrutiny or to benchmark or to the objective. And that output, I think, is about consistency, about timing, about excellence. So, it's about all of that, really. And I think to perform at that high level, to achieve, whatever high performance is, it is about preparation. It's about being informed. It's about being motivated and focused. It's about being committed. So I think if the ingredients are there, be really informed, be really well prepared, turn up on the day, be focused, be committed, be motivated. And if you can do that, then whatever your output is and whatever your performance is will stand up to whatever the benchmark is, the test or the scrutiny that you're on with them, whether that's an exam or whether that's, a game of football or whether it's a sales pitch. They're probably good ingredients for performance, I guess.
And then as a CEO in your roles, and how have you ensured high performance happens within your teams?
I guess there's a combination of things, from sort of leading by example and being committed to your own individual outputs all the time and on a consistent basis, and maintaining those standards, to securing people around you who are similarly motivated. So through recruitment and through ensuring that the standards of performance are transmitted not exclusively by yourself but by colleagues and by teammates. I think by regularly testing and monitoring it and inviting scrutiny and seeking confirmation, I think that's also important. But I think also one of the things that I learned at Everton, I thought was really important at Everton in the early stages, was about having really clear objectives, and clear objectives that are bite-sized, if you like, that they're very digestible, they're very understandable. There is that maxim, which is a bit of a cliche, about getting everything on one page, and I do subscribe to that, and I do think that objectives and visions and all those sorts of similar statements often fail because they're complex, too wordy, too jargonistic. They need to be brief, they need to be digestible, they need to be in plain English, and they need to be sustainable. Because I think the other aspect of that is they keep changing. You refresh them. We get a bit fed up with them. We'll tweak them one way, we'll tweak them the other way. And actually, I think sustainability is a really important thing about that. So one thing I also committed to in terms of that was, get them succinct and get them plain English and de-jargonize them, but then keep hammering them home, at every opportunity, whether it be big group sessions or little subliminal messages or whatever it was just refresh. So I think there's that messaging piece. I think there's the leading by example. I think there's recruitment, and I think there's that regular test, monitor, check. So I'd say that'd be the sort of mix of things that I would do.
Yeah. And then within your teams, and what sort of behaviours help create that high performance, do you think, in a person?
I think the behaviours that I would look for, across the board, a bit like some of the experiences I've had in work, that sort of can-do attitude, that positivity, that high energy levels, that consistent up for it, and excitement about what's in hand. So, I do expect people to be prepared to go the extra mile, to really buy into the project, to really buy into the job in hand, and go the extra mile. So I think that's almost an unwritten rule, but I think that's that's absolutely necessary. I think what generally just, and it ties into it, I guess, a little bit, just pride in output, pride in organisation, pride in, yourself, really, I guess. But, I always really believed that the organisation I was working for was the best firm of accountants in the world, the best broadcaster in the world, the best football club in the world. And I think you've got to believe that yourself. You work for the best school in the world, and you want your colleagues to believe you're working. So I think that pride's a big part of it. And then, as I said, I think general professionalism, attention to detail, standards, how things look, how things are presented, how you present yourself. So combination of things there, which is really can-do, work ethic, energy, positivity, pride in what you deliver as an individual, and professionalism. I think they'd be the things for me, Danny.
Yeah, I agree. Like what we're trying to do at Stockport is that message is just be the best version of yourself. That's in whatever you do, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a lesson or it's a workout. Just try and put everything into it, because I always say to the kids is that feeling you get if you know you haven't given it your best shot. That's a rubbish feeling. Whereas you leave knowing you could have done nothing different, then that mental well-being is so important as well. So
I agree with that, Danny. And in a simple way, a simple sort of, almost as I said, come back to this sort of real simple high-level messaging. What you've just described, and I hadn't really thought about it, is smile on face. And if you go into something with a smile on your face and you come out of it with a smile on your face, then the reality is you've probably achieved everything you've just said. So, smile is quite a good metaphor and a good sort of summary, umbrella type, whatever the word is for that whole thing. I think the other thing, and I was chatting to my wife about some of this, and sense of humour and a common sense pragmatism is really, really important. And I just relate that a little bit to footballers, because footballers for me used to get, and still do get, such a bad press. They get bad press. They get bracketed as being certain things. They're good at this, they're not good at that. And most of the footballers I met were really appreciative of what they had, worked phenomenally hard to get to where they were, but were equally, super company, great sense of humour, brilliant negotiators, and actually got those streetwise credentials that I think are almost invaluable, that you don't necessarily get through school, you just get through life. And I say to people, I would definitely trade a lot of my academic qualifications for the sense of humour of that individual and the streetwiseness of that person. And I think often those qualities are massively underplayed, not just in work, by society. So I think they're really important. Any young person's chance to build that, that sense of humour, that sense of that streetwiseness, that pragmatism, that engagement. And it comes back to, doesn't it? It comes back to how you relate to other people.
Yeah.
And if you relate to other people and you connect with other people in a way that's engaging and memorable, they're pretty good qualities to have in whatever walk of life.
No, brilliant. And then jumping away a little bit from this, obviously your time at Everton, and you had the January sort of time where you had the transfer windows. And can you talk us through a little bit of the life of a CEO on transfer deadline day on the 31st of January?
We had some memorable ones, some stressful ones, challenging ones, rewarding ones. I don't know if it was a January one, but and again, my memory might be clouding me here. But a combination of, I think it was Lukaku, McCarthy, and Fellaini. I think I might be right. They were all sort of done 2 in, 1 out in the space of about 3 hours. I remember signing Jelavic, and we did it at about 10 o'clock on the final day at night. And I got a call from the chairman saying, right, I want us to get Stephen Pienaar in on loan. And I just looked at my watch and thought, are you mad? And we did. And then I've also, had a call which says, we're going to sign players A and B. And me and my FD were looking at one another thinking, I was hoping we were going to say we were going to sell players D&E or whatever, or C&E, whatever it was, and making all that stack up. So real high stakes, really exciting. You've got to be on your ball. I describe it as the sort of ultimate game of poker, where the most informed, the best negotiator generally comes out on top, and they are absolutely the most critical decisions a football club can make. And that, as I said, is some of the things I talked about earlier about being informed, working hard, going the extra mile. They're the other things that help you in that negotiation. One thing we started to do later on, which was we kind of called it the sort of transfer window war room. So on the final day of the window, we'd base ourselves at the training ground. So we'd be close to scouts, players, agents, manager. And we'd take over one of the offices, and the accountants would pile in, the lawyers would pile in, the football secretary would pile in. I'd base myself there. And it was almost like I said, a bit of a war room or nerve center or whatever. So we just kind of knew that, if it was 45 minutes to go and the chairman and manager had said, right, we can get Stephen Pino on loan with 45 minutes, we were there and we were ready, and we were ready to exploit it. And it comes back to everything we did in the football club was to improve our performance on the pitch. Everything was about signing players and helping improve the squad. And therefore, any opportunity to do that, you absolutely had to make certain that it wouldn't slip through your fingers. And so you were fully tooled up, you were fully ready to go, you were prepared to go the extra mile, and you pretty much do whatever you took to get that player, within the budget parameters you've set. So it was really, really exciting. Sometimes nerve-wracking, sometimes, probably always stressful, but driving home generally with a real big sense of satisfaction. Ultimately, again, you come back to, this is all about what happens on the pitch, delivering for fans, and going home thinking, I can't wait for Saturday to see how he plays or how he fits in. That's right at the very heart of what the job was all about. So it was exciting as well.
And then just talk a little bit about yourself and people who have influenced you. You talked a little bit about your wall of fame, but have you got anybody who stands out who have influenced you on your journey, and if so, why?
I touched on one. The guy, the partner I worked with at Deloitte in the early days was a hard taskmaster, and that was painful. But we learned a lot about detail, about deadlines, about fundamentally how to write and present and convey arguments, and that stood me in good stead. A really simple lesson. I think, like most people, I kind of at that age I thought, I know how to write. I've written thousands of essays for exams and tests. I got an economics degree, and yet I'd write reports, and and I'd look back on them and I think, God, that doesn't. And he just simply said to me, "What are you trying to say?" And I do this with my kids, and I've done this with other people. What are you trying to say? So I articulate verbally what I want to say. So just write it exactly as you've just said it. And that was a really good lesson, a really simple lesson, I guess a really small lesson, but it was a good lesson in communication skills. So he helped me a lot. The first person I worked with in sport, we just connected because of our love for rugby league. And the first thing pretty much he said to me was, "You're in the business of selling dreams." And I've never really forgotten that, because anything in sport is ultimately about a dream, and it's about that dream sustaining a fan base and loyalty and driving and maintaining interest and growth in a club. So that was always, that proved to be good advice. Working at Everton, I worked with some phenomenal managers whose work ethic was just amazing, obsessiveness about every aspect of preparation, which was really inspiring in a way. Really a real good negotiator at the head of the club, who, I think over a long period of time consistently out-traded rivals, selling higher and buying cheaper. I think for a long period, Everton consistently did that, and that was about negotiation skills. So, that was a real good learning point for me. So, lots of people, and wherever I've worked, you just try and take bits out of that. The thing about one page, the thing about simple messaging was when I worked at Sky, a CEO there who said just, almost religiously get it on one page. And that was, a good discipline, so lots of people give me lots of good advice on the way.
No, that's good. One thing I always learned, which I relate to there, is somebody always told me, if you're talking about visions or trying to communicate, try and think about it like a tweet. So on a tweet, you've only got so many characters. Just get it across in those very few characters, which is quite a good one.
I think it is, and I think part of that also helps you de-jargonise things, because I cringe when I see, marketing speak or words that are just overused and misunderstood. And I think eliminating jargon out of daily life is also a real good thing as well.
Obviously, over your journey, and everyone gets these, you have setbacks and you have highs. Professionally, have you had any setbacks? And if you have, how did you overcome those?
Of course, I've had setbacks. I've had some real challenging moments where things haven't gone as I'd hoped, and digging deep. And somebody said to me, probably my strongest feature, I never really thought about this, was my resilience. And I think I'm a pretty resilient guy who I come back to. Maybe it's all those years running and slugging myself up hills where physically and mentally you get tough and you get resilient. And maybe, again, wouldn't have ever thought that, but maybe that's true. But when I came back from Australia, as I said, I was meandering my way through the world of accountancy. I'd passed my exams first time. I'd got glowing reports. I'd been promoted. I got a new shiny car. I got a convertible Peugeot 205 GTI as a company car. And looking back, I had such a sense of entitlement, or not entitlement, but everything comes easy. And because I've been away and come back, I got called into the partner's office one day, and they told me they were making me redundant. And it was like, me? You can't be doing this to me. I'm like golden balls. I've never, and that was phenomenally tough. And I would have been mid-20s. One thing about this, there's not many people I've told this, but you get to a point in your life where you just, just comfortable with it. But at the time, it was like, can't tell anybody this. And actually, the first thing I did was almost immediately got the first job I possibly could. So nobody probably knew I'd been made redundant, because I just changed jobs. But it was tough. But the big learning was this, invincibility, this golden balls, this, you're lucky to have me type approach, which I don't think I had in any extreme level, was knocked out of me in an instant. And that's always really, I think, in the end, stood me in good stead. What it has done is probably made me, a bit risk averse, a bit cautious, don't want to let that happen again. And that's not a good thing. And I think being able to embrace that, I wish, probably I could, embrace that perhaps a bit more readily. But I do see lots of young people who, I read CVs, I read personal statements, I, hear calls for, experience and promotion. And I do really welcome and like the young person who's ambitious but realistic, with feet on ground, know what they're good at, know what they're not good at, know where they need to learn. And a sort of self-awareness of that, I think, is really, really important. And perhaps I didn't have that in my mid-20s, which was this bolt from the blue that hit me. But I think, again, for young people listening to this, just, you don't earn lots of money and get great jobs without earning your stripes, doing the work, and being really, really good at something. And there aren't shortcuts. And I know I'll probably sound like everybody's dad, but it's really true. And I do feel that people have, entitlements and believe they're probably better than they are, in a nutshell, Danny. And I think having that groundedness without in any way tempering ambition, I think is really useful and important.
And then on the flip side, you've had so many accomplishments over your career and your life. Which one stands out to you that you're most proud of, and why?
I don't think there's an individual moment. There's been a series of sort of personal and professional wins and things that have given me real satisfaction, but not a standout. Like I said, getting a Yorkshire vest in athletics was pretty good. Walking around Australia with a tracksuit with my name on the back and a GB flag on the front, albeit in my age group, that was pretty good. But they're all, I think, relative to my point in my life, what I was good at, what I wasn't. So I wanted to be a runner, but I was never fast. So my mile time was the same as my 10-mile time, but I didn't get any faster. I could just run longer. But then I ran a 3K race in a track race at Sheffield and did a brilliant time, like 8:49. And I thought maybe these big fat legs can go quick. So little things like that really resonated with me professionally. CEO job at Everton was a great day. Being offered the chance to come back and lead Super League was a great day. But I guess I always also liked it when you got sort of other people crediting performance. So at Everton, we worked really hard, I think, to define what the club was all about. And then I think it was the Daily Telegraph wrote a report which said, we were the go-to club. We were the blueprint of, how to run a Premier League football club, and that covered on and off the field behaviours, what we stood for, values. And to read that, which was basically somebody independent saying all this hard work that you've put in is being recognised and validated and presented as something good, that was really good. And I think for a while I probably had that cutting stuck on my desk at work for a while. So there isn't, I don't think, a real sort of standout moment, and they're all kind of little highs relevant to where I was in my life, where my focus was one thing, my focus was a different thing. So combination of all of those.
3 non-negotiable behaviours you'd expect from you and anybody else you'd come into contact with.
I think I probably touched on that a little bit when we, when you asked me about high performance. I think sort of being prepared to go the extra mile, work ethic, up and at it, part of a team, getting the job done, whatever it takes to get the job done. So that approach, which is, if you need somebody to stay and work longer, if you want somebody to do something over the weekend, I'll do it. I really, and actually that's something that, I struggle with in terms of, are my expectations there unreasonable? Are they too high? And people talk about millennials. I think people talk about this generation versus the old generation. Myself and MFD were both the same age. We both went through accountancy at the same time. We just worked for hours and hours and hours without question. Now, were we right or were we wrong? Is the millennial generation who questions that a bit more? Are they right? But for me personally, I can't get away from the fact that somebody prepared to go the extra mile when required, without any question, is really, really important. I think, professionalism around attention to detail, how you look, how you present, how you speak, turning up on time, punctuality, that professionalism, that is right. I have to say, this probably sounds a bit, I don't know how it sounds, but, use of appropriate language. I go into so many meetings where somebody will swear at some point, and I'm like, you're in a meeting, you don't swear. And so, but these are my little quirks, maybe my idiosyncrasies. I don't know whether other people are tolerant of it, but it's about that professionalism, which is you don't swear in a meeting, but remarkably loads of people do. So that's probably a little bit of my own little idiosyncrasy. And I think the final thing is what I talked about is pride. It's pride in output. It's actually pride in organisation. So you really want to believe in it, but you really want to be here and you really believe in us. You're prepared to go the extra mile and you maintain really high standards of professionalism. I think that'd be it.
And then advice to your younger self at school days, or it could be any pupil at Stockport Grammar School, knowing what you know now. What would that advice be?
Okay. There's a lot of things in what I've said where I think, advice maybe, can be picked out of it. I think, I look back and think I wish I'd have been a bit braver in terms of, looking at opportunities, different opportunities, looking at opportunities in different parts of the country. I'd had quite a conservative upbringing. I was very risk averse. I was very, and I wish I'd have pushed a bit harder on that. So, going out to Sydney was brilliant. I regret not coming home from Sydney and going to work in London or going to work in New York or doing something, and I was always a little bit conservative. So I think be brave. So embrace opportunities. move away, experience different things. So I would do that. I would take destiny into your own hands. And I think out of all the jobs I've worked in, probably only one or perhaps two have been advertised and have been me responding to an opportunity rather than me making an opportunity. So I think, manage your own destiny, make things happen for yourself. There is that, great sort of, divide around sort of whatever will be. Tomorrow will bring whatever it will be. If it was meant to be, it'll happen. If it's not meant to be, it won't happen. And all of those things are kind of, I find really difficult to cope with. I'd much rather grab hold of it and try and make it happen. But maybe somewhere in the middle ground is the right thing to do. One thing that Roberto Martinez said to me was, we were chatting about players, and this is probably maybe a bit of a cliche, but he said a modern day footballer has to be brilliant at everything, but out of this world at one thing. And I think the message for me there to a young person is get really good at something, be passionate about it, and get really, really good at it, because that's how you stand out. That's how you differentiate. And I think differentiation is really important. So, stand out, not stand out because you're stand out because you're different is fine. But I'm saying stand out based on quality, stand out because you are absolutely brilliant about something. You're super knowledgeable about something. I think so much of what we see today is skimmed, is a little bit superficial. Therefore, prove to people you've dig deep and you've asked the next question and you've asked the question after that. So I think get really good at something or get really knowledgeable about something, and that will allow you to stand out and differentiate. And I think that's really important. I think, read widely, be worldly wise, be interested in Biden's inauguration, or be interested in, what's happening in China, and again, maybe I'm sounding like somebody's dad, but read newspapers, read social news, digital news, whatever it is, whatever. I think just have an opinion on things, be worldly wise, be well read. I think, so I'm rambling through a lot of things here, but get really good at something, be passionate about something, be well read, be interesting, and be interested in others, and all sorts of things in there, Danny, but people can pick through the bones of that if they want.
Because I see somebody else I was speaking to, they were saying that he wanted to learn and learn about different cultures because he want to have a conversation with anybody and have that ability to do that, because I think that's a really, really important skill.
I agree with that. Although I was listening to Chris Evans, and I like this one again. Chris Evans on Virgin Radio had said, be interested, interesting.
Yes.
And what he was saying was, and I think this is a really wonderful quality for people who can be interested in you or something else and not just focus on be interesting themselves intrinsically. And that resonated with me. I like that. And I wish I could work harder at those qualities, because you do, it becomes about you, and actually taking it away from you and being about somebody else, I think is a lovely, warm characteristic that you should aspire to have.